Hi, everyone. I'm Robyn Sechler, and in honor of International Women's Day, I'm here with Erin Creger to discuss the role that women play in leaving a legacy. Erin is the National Sales Director for Envision, a pre-needs sales and marketing company that helps funeral homes to grow in a healthy and honest way. Erin has an impressive background in not only the funeral industry, but also in sales, team building, team recruitment, as well as having the pleasure to support some of the most successful and compassionate pre-planning sales counselors in the country. Erin, you are definitely recognized as a leader in these areas. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you, Robyn. I'm honored to be here and excited to be chatting with you today.
In honor of International Women's Day, we find that women in your profession are definitely growing in number, but it's not something that has always been very common. You've been in the field for a long time. Can you share with us the story about how you got to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, growing up as a little girl and then a young adult, when we think about the funeral profession, you think of an undertaker, as they used to be called, or a mortician. It's generally a man's role. I mean, when we used to visualize that or in the movies, it was definitely male dominated, and that has shifted. But it's sort of a funny story how I ended up here. So I started in sales in my late teens, early 20s. I did some door-to-door selling, but then got into home improvement and found that to be a really great experience, just learning experience and honing my sales skills. But then I went through a really difficult patch of my life in my early 30s, and I got a divorce. I was really close with my grandmother at that time. I actually grew up on the East Coast, and we moved to Salt Lake City when I was in high school, when my mother and my grandmother had sort of reconciled. So I wasn't close to her in my younger years, but she became one of my best friends as we reconnected as a teenager. So that was a really fun experience. So I was kind of deciding, the proverbial, what do I want to do with my life and what's my purpose, as I felt like I had a really unique opportunity to reinvent myself in my early 30s. And I wasn't sure what that was. I thought about real estate and, some of the usual things that you might think about. And I knew my grandmother had a really difficult experience when her husband passed away. So she felt really strongly that she wanted everything with her funeral down to the flowers all planned so that we didn't have to go through that experience. So my mom had actually once mentioned, like, I think you can sell funerals or something. And I thought, well, that's weird. Okay. I didn't think much more about it. So one day my grandma calls me in the morning. Hey, Erin. Oh, hi, Grandma. Well, I have to tell you, I woke up at 2 a.m. and I know what you're supposed to do with your life. So obviously not what I was expecting from a call from Grandma, but I thought, okay, well, let's hear this. And she said, I met with a lady yesterday and I got everything done for my funeral, down to the obituary, the death certificates, the flowers. And of course, like any nice grandmother, you're thinking, your granddaughter, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to think about it. What are you talking about? But she said, there's a piece I have now, and I am so comforted knowing that this was done. And I think this is what you're supposed to do with your life. And at this point, I didn't know anything about it. Is this a sales role? I didn't know anything about insurance. I didn't know how money was held, but I thought about it. And I then about 2 nights later on my own, woke up at almost 2 a.m. and I thought, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I've always felt a really genuine, sincere connection to older people. In high school, I would volunteer in nursing homes, and they talk about find what you would do for free and then find a way to make money doing it, and you're pretty lucky. And so I didn't really know where to start. So I actually contacted the gal who sold my grandma her funeral plan. And I said, hi, my name's Erin. I don't know much about what you do, but I think I want to do what you do. And where do I start? And she said, well, we're not really hiring. I can give you my boss's info, but he might get a little annoyed because I've sent a couple people. It didn't go well. So we'll just send me his info. I promise I won't bug him. And so I ended up reaching out. Long story short, West Folger, who's now my business partner, fast forward 10 years, is who hired me into the business. He didn't return my call for almost 3 months the first time. And then he ghosted me for another 3 months. And I finally just showed up and I said, listen, we are doing this. And the gal, this is another beautiful story. So the gal who sold my grandmother her funeral plan, her name is Tacey Vogel. She's still in the business and we are now dear, dear friends. We just spoke last night. She's been a mentor to me. She's joked that I've been a mentor to her. I said, well, we're just all here helping each other. So I was lucky enough. I started with a funeral home here in Salt Lake City. And I just started at the beginning. I just wanted to learn everything about the business, from selling to behind the scenes to the care center. I've never been a licensed director or embalmer, but I've been in that world. I've worked at a cemetery. I've helped with cremations and headstones. And it is a really emotionally charged profession. And it takes a special kind of person that has to be in it for the right reasons. The really nice thing I like about this is if you're not in it for the right reasons, it'll vet you out quickly and you'll learn very fast. So I sold full-time for a few years. I was very fortunate to have success in that. But then I realized I really had a love for helping other people find their passion in this field. And so hiring, recruiting, training people into this business is something I just can't say enough about how honored I am to be able to do that every day. So Envision started about 6 years ago. I've been with them since the beginning. And it's just been a wonderful, exciting journey. I'm happy to be here.
I love all of that, Erin. I've heard you tell that story before, and every time I hear it, it just makes me think, I would love to hear that story from the perspective of your grandma, right? What was
Yes.
she, sort of like what went through her mind, and how did she come to this idea that that's what you were supposed to do, connecting the dots between her experience and what she thought, might be a good experience for you. And I think you said it yourself that it takes a very special person to be able to do what you do. And you clearly have a ton of passion around it. So I'm excited that you have found that thing, what you want to do when you grow up.
Yeah, right. If I ever grow up, I'll be really excited.
Right.
But yes.
So,
yeah. And I think there's something about when we're in a difficult place in our life, as I was broke, I was divorced, I was borrowing money from my parents to get a down payment on a townhouse to rent. I wasn't in a healthy place to have enough confidence to see that maybe this was a path for me. But my grandmother saw that in me, and she was, that energy I needed that I didn't have for myself, and the confidence that I didn't have in myself to see that, no, this is what you're supposed to do. I don't think I would have ever seen that at that time. And I've thought a lot about that if I would have ever gotten there on my own. But I think it's a good reminder that we need to listen to the people that love us, even if we kind of roll our eyes at, oh my goodness, funeral, what is this? But be open to whatever that means.
I think that is so important. And, you said that your grandmother saw this thing in you that she thought you would be a really good fit. And do you think that as we celebrate, International Women's Month and International Women's Day in March, do you think that being a female in this role makes a difference for you?
Yes, I feel very strongly that there's some really unique advantages that women have in this field. I work with some incredible men as well, and the mentors and people that have trained me, a lot of those people are men, but I think you have to think of both sides of, we're either mothers of children or we're caretakers of parents, but we have some unique skill sets, whether we chose them or not. We're multitaskers, we're planners, we're organized, we have empathy and compassion. But it also allows us to earn the right to be a little bit more direct with people about what really is in their best interest. Because if people know that we have the best intentions and that trust is there, we can say to a family, we need to figure out a way to get this done so your kids don't have to worry about it. And then have an honest conversation. And I think when we're coming from a place of empathy and compassion, and they trust us as an advisor, I do think there are times that it's easier for women to have that conversation. Of course, there's men that do an incredible job, but I think it's something we're just figuring out in the last decade or so, is that why hasn't this always been a female dominated field? just the taking. And you think about even back in the 1800s, a lot of the midwives and medical support staff, a lot of those people just naturally are women. And I think it's gravitating more towards that, which I'm obviously thrilled about and love.
Of course. And it is, such a sensitive topic that you're having conversations around. And, I think the delivery is important for the families of, if they're planning ahead or if they're planning for somebody they've lost, those conversations are very, sensitive and difficult. And so having, a little bit of, or a lot of compassion around it definitely would put a family at ease. So I could see how that would make a difference. What would you suggest or recommend to, say, a young female who wanted to get into the field?
Oh, I love this question. So the best advice, and this is probably true for a lot of fields, but I think more so with this, is find a mentor and find someone that you trust that will be really honest with you, good or bad, about how you're doing and what you can do to be of better service to the families. I think it's important, we have our bosses and our managers, and of course, listen to them, and that's great. But maybe find someone a little bit more removed that has some experience that can help just guide you, or just be a listening ear, because there are going to be days that are really emotional. I mean, we're dealing with heavy things. We're dealing with loss. Sometimes it's, when my grandma died, she was almost 80 and it was sad, but she lived a beautiful life. But it's not always that. We see suicides, we see overdoses, we see children it's some heavy stuff. You have to have people other than your immediate family, because we also have to be aware, if you're coming home every night at the dinner table and telling your husband and kids about how heavy everything is, that might be hard for them to digest. So finding people that get it, that are in your shoes. The other piece of advice that I think is really important that I've been able to put into words better this last year is, sometimes in this business, some of us work for family-owned funeral homes, some of us work for corporations, some of us work for vendors or partners, and sometimes we tend to make people the other. They're in another company, they're not doing what I'm doing, and so we sort of put a wall between us, and I think we need to start breaking down those walls. Start making connections with and friends with people who are like-minded, who are also trying to serve families, and not for the sake of career advancement, not because you're hoping to get hired somewhere. But I think the really great thing about this profession, and any conventions I attend or conferences, it is filled with some of the nicest, kindest people. And sometimes you get told, well, this company is our competitor. I just think there's no such thing. They are all people trying to provide for their families and trying to serve the client families to their best of their ability. So be open-minded about, get outside of your company, get outside of your bubble, and make connections with and friends with people anywhere in the industry that you feel like have similar energy to yours.
Isn't that true in life in general? Right?
Yes.
Stepping outside of your comfort zone, trying new things, going new places, connecting with new people. There is so much opportunity out there in the world that if, we sort of stick in our own little bubble, sometimes you miss things. And maybe you would have missed the opportunity had you not stepped outside of your comfort zone to reach out to the person that your grandmother had dealt with. And I think that just brings it full circle, right?
Yes. I mean, I think that's, I'm in a book club and we recently reread Year of Yes. And the concept is just say yes, get outside of your comfort zone. I mean, even doing this interview, and I'm honored, but there's a part of you that goes, oh, I have to, I have to do an interview and I have to talk about myself. And so your natural inclination is, oh, maybe not, but just get out there and make connections. And if you need help, ask for help. And then when you get to a point that you can give help, give it. Because I think that's maybe the most rewarding part about being where I am now, is I'm seeing people starting in the business. And there is just nothing else like helping someone that's maybe also in a difficult spot, that's able to find their passion and their career and their purpose. There's nothing like it.
Oh, the excitement you have just like radiates off of you. I love listening to you because you
Oh,
definitely
thanks.
are passionate about what you do.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you one more question as we sort of round or circle back around to the idea of legacy. In your field, you really get to help people leave their last impression, their last legacy. Tell me what that means to you.
That is everything. I mean, that is what we do. We help people make a decision consciously, not in a place of grief or uncertainty about what they want that final memory to look like for their family. And so I want to share a story about that. When I was first selling, I met with this couple. It was Bob and Shirley, and Shirley was the one kind of nudging the appointment along. Like usual, statistically, it's women that generally. Right, yes. And Bob was kind of doing this, and okay, I'll listen. Shirley set this appointment and get on with it, and we ended up building a nice connection. But Shirley actually, she was into quilting and needlepoints, and she would needlepoint some pillows. And Bob was a big fisherman, and so I kind of got him talking about that. There were some local fishing spots that I had tried, and he was giving me some advice. So by the end of it, they did decide to fund their funeral plans and got everything taken care of. And I even made him pick out his flowers. He rolled his eyes the whole way, but she said, "You are having flowers. I don't care." And so fast forward about 3 years, I wasn't in the field selling, but I was helping the funeral home with an event, with a seminar, a lunch and learn. And I'll try to get through this without getting emotional. But so Bob showed up, and I said, "Oh my gosh, Bob, how are you?" Because we had kind of stayed in touch. And he said, "Well, I'm doing really well, but I don't know if you heard, but Shirley passed away about 3 months ago." And I hadn't heard because I wasn't actively at this funeral home anymore. And so I expressed my condolences, and he came up to me and he just said, "Erin, I'm so glad you twisted my arm and made me do this." He said, "Part of the planning guide you left, she made a needlepoint pillow for all 13 of our grandkids. And we handed it out at the funeral. And it was the best decision of my life. And I just want to thank you." So when we talk about a legacy, the great part after this, so we're giving our spiel at the seminar to everyone about the importance of planning. And Bob stood up and said, "If any of you don't do this, you don't love your family. You better sign up today." I thought, whoa, Bob, whoa. But it was so great. He was such an advocate. I joked that I was going to pay him to do the seminar circuit with me and come talk. But something that's so simple and was so uncomfortable. We talked about that, right? It was so uncomfortable for him. I was the last person he wanted to walk into his house that day. But how meaningful that was, and the difference that would have been if they hadn't had that conversation in advance, and what that final memory would have looked like for her. I just think it's everything. We hear people say, "Oh, I don't need to plan. I'm going to just be cremated," as an example. There is no such thing. Your family is going to do something. It might be, they might meet at the bar for a drink. They might do a brunch. They might meet at the park, but they are going to do something to honor you. And it's important that you have that conversation so it's not left to them. And I love being in a position where people trust me enough that they're open and vulnerable, that we can have such an important conversation. I never take it for granted. It's an honor every single time. And now being able to help other people learn how to have those conversations is just incredibly rewarding. So
I didn't know we were going to need tissues today. But I love that story. And it makes me think, just quickly, I'll share I lost my dad about 12 years ago, and he had 96 ties. And so he had in his plans that he wanted each of my brothers and I to have a pillow made out of his ties. And so we each have one of those. And otherwise, we would have probably thrown the ties away, because what else do you do with them?
Yeah, so you wouldn't have thought about it.
We wouldn't have thought about doing something quite like that. So it's something.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was very special to us. And, you have the ability to help people in those situations to be thinking forward and thinking about how they can pass on their legacy and how they can still continue to be a part of their family even when they're not. And I so appreciate your leadership in this space. You have done an amazing, amazing job, and your energy is infectious, and I love it. And I am so excited for all of the people that you get to mentor, because what an experience they have with you.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. I love it. And I'm always happy to talk about it, because I feel so strongly about the need, just for this profession in general and for people who are in it for the right reasons. And I think we're seeing that, and it matters and it makes a difference.
Well, I'm so grateful for you spending your time with us here today. Thank you so much for that, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks, Robyn. So good to be with you today.
Yes, you too.